What if I told you that the unease you've been feeling lately isn't a breakdown, but a breakthrough? That the strange stillness, the quiet departures, and the emotional waves you can't quite name are actually signs that something ancient within you is finally reaching its end? You wouldn't be alone in sensing it. There comes a moment in the soul's journey where the lessons you've been learning for lifetimes begin to settle like dust after a long storm. You don't always know how to explain it, but something deep inside whispers that you're not who you used to be. And it's not because you're becoming someone new, it's because you're remembering who you were always meant to be. There's a shift happening within you, one that's not loud or dramatic, but unmistakable once you feel it. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or fanfare. It shows up in the quiet moments when an old wound doesn't sting the way it used to, when a familiar pattern tries to pull you back in but fails to hook you, when you choose silence instead of conflict, peace instead of power. These aren't just signs of emotional growth, they are the subtle indicators that a karmic cycle may be completing. Karmic cycles are real. They are not metaphors or poetic ideas, they are the invisible scaffolding of your soul's evolution. They show up as recurring themes, unresolved emotions, or patterns in relationships that loop through your life like echoes from lifetimes past. And whether you believe in past lives or not, you've felt it. That feeling of, here we go again, when another betrayal looks like the last one, when scarcity seems to follow you no matter how much you earn, or when love arrives in a different body but teaches the same hard lessons. You didn't attract these experiences because you were cursed or broken. You attracted them because your soul chose them. Long before you were born, long before you took your first breath, your soul crafted a blueprint, a sacred agreement known in many traditions as a soul contract. This contract isn't about punishment. It's about progress. It outlines the major lessons your soul agreed to work through in this lifetime. And those lessons? They repeat, not because the universe is cruel, but because the soul learns through repetition, through friction, through mirrors. Think of your karmic patterns as spiral staircases. You don't just go in circles. You revisit the same themes from higher perspectives each time, slowly rising. Every heartbreak that looks like the last isn't actually the same. It's an invitation to respond differently, to choose from the wisdom you didn't have before. That's the soul evolving. That's you, integrating lifetimes of experience into this one sacred moment. In Vedic astrology and many mystical traditions, karma is seen not as a debt, but as an energetic imprint, a ripple caused by past actions, intentions, and emotions. These ripples follow the soul like cosmic fingerprints, manifesting in various areas of life until the energy is understood, neutralized, or transformed. And here's the truth most people miss. Karma doesn't need to be paid back in pain. It only needs to be seen with awareness. Once the lesson is integrated, the energy dissolves, the cycle ends. But ending doesn't always feel the way you expect it to. Karmic completion isn't a fireworks finale. It's a whisper, a deep exhale, a quiet liberation that comes when you no longer feel the need to fight the same battles. You stop chasing what always eluded you. You stop blaming others for the roles they played in your awakening. You begin to soften not from defeat, but from wisdom. And that softening, that peace that starts to bloom even in the middle of uncertainty, that is your soul signaling completion. You may feel confused right now, like you're in between worlds, not quite who you used to be, but not yet clear on where you're going. That's the space between karmic death and spiritual rebirth. It can feel disorienting, like losing interest in the things that once defined you. Like no longer being able to pretend in relationships that no longer serve your growth. Like your ambition fading, not because you've given up, but because your soul is no longer interested in achieving things for ego validation. You might even feel bored, disconnected, as if life has gone strangely quiet. Don't rush to fill the silence. That silence is sacred. It's the pause before a new story begins. And it's in that pause that your soul recalibrates, releasing what no longer aligns, preparing for what comes next. Completion isn't about escape. It's not about bypassing life's challenges or floating above human experience. It's about elevation. You don't stop experiencing emotions. you simply stop being ruled by them. You don't stop facing difficult people or situations. You just stop identifying with them. You respond instead of reacting. You observe instead of attaching. And in doing so, you free yourself. The karmic cycle ends not when life gets easier, but when you meet difficulty from a place of clarity, compassion, and inner stability. You may still be tested, but your energy no longer leaks. Your peace no longer shatters. You no longer see life as happening to you, you see it as happening through you. There's a strange quiet that accompanies this phase, a hum of neutrality. It's not detachment in the cold sense. It's a sacred neutrality, the kind that comes when you've felt every feeling, cried every tear, yelled every truth, and now there's nothing left to fight. Not because you've lost, but because you've won the only battle that ever mattered, the one within yourself. This is the whisper of completion. And if you're hearing it, even faintly, know that you're not imagining things. Your soul has traveled long to get here. You've done the work across lifetimes, across lessons, across heartbreaks and rebirths, and now you're close. So close. Not to an ending, but to a return. A return to your own clarity, to your own sovereignty, to your own divine rhythm. Listen to that whisper, trust it, honor it, because when a karmic cycle ends, a new light enters. And that light is you. You've probably heard the word karma tossed around in casual conversation. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and a friend jokes, "Karma will get them." A celebrity faces a downfall, and the comments roll in. That's karma, but here's the truth you've likely sensed deep down. That definition isn't just incomplete, it's entirely misleading. Karma is not punishment. It's not some vengeful cosmic force waiting to strike you down when you slip up. And it's certainly not here to shame you or keep you small. Karma is far more intimate than that. It's not about judgment, it's about reflection. Karma, in its truest essence, is energetic memory. It's the echo of what your soul has chosen, again and again, across lifetimes. Not because you're broken, not because you're wrong, but because your soul has been on a journey of learning what love truly is, what power truly is, what responsibility, surrender, forgiveness, and trust really feel like when lived through the human experience. You see, karma is not something that's done to you, it's something that flows through you. It's the natural outpicturing of the energetic imprints you've left on the world, on others, and most importantly, on yourself. This is why karma often looks like a mirror. You meet yourself in the people you attract, in the patterns you repeat, in the emotions you can't shake. That toxic relationship you stayed in longer than you should have? That wasn't punishment. It was a reflection of a deeper, energetic lesson your soul had not yet integrated, maybe around worthiness, maybe around boundaries, maybe around healing ancient wounds of abandonment. The frustration you've felt around money, the way it always seems to just slip away, that too may be an echo, not of your failure, but of a long-held pattern around scarcity, fear, or self-reliance. When you understand karma as feedback rather than fate, everything shifts. You're no longer trapped in a story where the universe is unfair or life is against you. Instead, you begin to see the patterns for what they are: invitations. Every repeating scenario, every emotionally charged experience, every "why does this keep happening to me?" moment is your soul waving a flag saying, there's something here you still need to see. It's not random, it's precise. Karma is like a spiritual curriculum, custom designed for you by you. Think of it like an educational loop your soul willingly enters, with the hope of mastering a specific theme or frequency. In this way, karma isn't about blame, it's about responsibility. You're not being punished, you're being refined. You didn't come here to be perfect, you came here to remember. To alchemize pain into wisdom. To meet the parts of yourself that still operate from fear, separation, or illusion, and bring them back home. Imagine if every karmic cycle in your life was actually a class. Relationships 101, abandonment, recovery, power, humility, forgiveness of the unforgivable. Some of these classes you pass quickly, Others you repeat over and over until you stop memorizing the material and actually embody it. Just like in school, if you don't pass the test, you're not sent to the principal's office, you're just asked to take the class again. That's karma, repetition, not retaliation. When you begin to see karma this way, you stop fearing it. You stop dreading what might come back around. You begin to welcome the lessons, even the hard ones, because you know they are tailored to your growth. And that growth doesn't come from suffering itself, it comes from awareness. You don't have to burn to learn, but you do have to see. There are souls who spend lifetimes trapped in karmic spirals simply because they don't realize they're holding the key. That key is presence, awareness, the ability to meet a moment and say, "This feels familiar. What is this showing me about myself?" That moment of reflection is where karma shifts. That's when the loop can end. Let's be clear, karma doesn't mean you deserve to be hurt. It doesn't mean your trauma was somehow your fault. There are collective karmas, ancestral karmas, societal karmas that influence your experiences. But even those are not punishments. They are part of a grand unraveling, a deep purification of what humanity has carried for generations. You are not just healing for you. You are often healing for your bloodline, your past lives, your entire soul group. That's why some of your lessons feel impossibly heavy, because they are layered. But your soul knew what it was doing when it chose this. The idea that karma is some kind of cosmic justice system misunderstands the whole purpose of incarnation. You didn't come here to be judged. You came here to evolve, and evolution requires exposure. Your blind spots will be brought to light, not to shame you, but to liberate you. The universe doesn't keep score, it keeps flow. The moment you choose to see with clarity, to act from love, to forgive where you once resented, the current shifts. And here's the part many people miss. Karma is not just about what you did, it's also about what you believed, because beliefs shape your choices, beliefs shape your energy. If you believed you were unworthy in a past life, you may carry patterns of self-sabotage into this one. If you believed you had to sacrifice your happiness to please others, you may find yourself constantly depleted. These beliefs become your karma not because they're wrong, but because they're outdated. Your work now isn't to pay for anything. Your work is to see clearly, to feel deeply, to choose differently. Karma dissolves the moment the lesson is integrated. Not when you earn your way out, but when you realize you were never truly trapped in the first place. You were simply on a path of remembering. The beauty of karma is that it always leaves you breadcrumbs. It will never stop showing up until you've gotten what your soul came for. And when you do, something shifts. The people you used to magnetize fall away. The triggers lose their charge. The emotions that once consumed you begin to pass like clouds. That's not luck. That's not random. That's karma transforming. So if you're going through something right now that feels familiar, repetitive, or just plain heavy, don't ask, "What did I do to deserve this?" Ask, "What is this here to teach me?" The moment you make that shift, you step out of the loop and into your liberation. You are not broken. You are not being punished. You are being refined. And your soul, ancient, wise, and luminous, knows exactly what it's doing. What if I told you that the reason you've felt stuck in the same patterns, the same heartbreaks, the same fears, isn't because you've failed in this life, but because you're carrying lessons that began long before this lifetime ever started? That the pain you've endured, the strange synchronicities, the uncanny sense of déjà vu that follows you like a shadow, is not coincidence, it's memory, soul memory, and it's trying to guide you home. Your life did not begin with your birth. That was only the latest chapter in a book your soul has been writing for eons. You are not new to this world. You've been here before, many times. In different bodies, in different forms, under different names, and yet, somehow, it's still you. The same core essence, the same consciousness, the same eternal flame, dressed in new clothing, walking a new path that feels familiar in ways you can't quite explain. Reincarnation isn't just a mystical theory whispered in temples or printed in ancient scrolls. It is the soul's way of evolving through direct experience. Each lifetime you live is like a classroom. each relationship a mirror, each heartbreak a teacher. And as strange as it may sound, you agreed to all of it. Before you came here, your soul knew what needed to be healed, what wounds had not yet been transformed, and what wisdom was still waiting to be earned through the sacred trials of being human. Have you ever noticed how certain themes keep showing up in your life? No matter how much you grow, no matter how much you try to change, the same core struggles keep returning. Maybe it's abandonment, maybe it's betrayal, maybe it's scarcity, or rejection, or the feeling of never truly being seen. They show up in different people, in different settings, wearing different faces. But the feeling underneath is always the same. This is not punishment, this is repetition with a purpose. Your soul keeps drawing in these experiences because something in you is ready to heal them. But healing doesn't happen by avoidance, it happens by recognition. The patterns persist not because you're broken, but because the lesson is sacred. And when you finally see it, when you stop asking why me and start asking what is this teaching me, something changes. The pattern loses its grip. The karmic loop begins to unravel. And you're not doing this alone. You never have been. The souls who journey with you lifetime after lifetime are not random. They are your soul family. The ones who agreed to meet you again and again, sometimes as friends, sometimes as lovers, sometimes as challengers, all to help you evolve. The mother who seemed overly critical, the partner who shattered your heart, the sibling who never truly understood you, they are part of your blueprint. They volunteered to play roles that would trigger your growth, roles that would mirror the wounds your soul came to heal. In the spirit world, before incarnation, these souls meet with you. Together, you plan the themes, the lessons, the major turning points of your next life. It's not scripted down to every detail, but the framework is there. Who you'll meet, what you'll feel, the crossroads you'll face, and the free will you'll carry in each moment to either repeat the old or choose something new. This is what makes the journey so profound. You have the power to shift it at any moment. The blueprint is not a prison, it's a path. And while you may start the journey in the same loop you've lived before, you don't have to finish it there. Every conscious choice you make ripples through your timeline. Every act of forgiveness, every moment of awareness, every time you pause and respond with love instead of fear, it all rewrites the story. But to rewrite it, you must first recognize the pattern. It often begins in childhood. The same dynamics from previous lifetimes tend to resurface early, embedded within your family system. These aren't just personal traumas, they're ancestral echoes. The wounds of your lineage may have been passed down like heirlooms, inherited in silence, expressed through behavior, stored in the cells of your body. And if you're the one who's starting to notice, if you're the one feeling the call to heal, that's not by accident. You were born into your family, not just to belong, but to transmute. You are what many traditions call a cycle breaker. That means your soul is not here to repeat what came before. You're here to end it, to interrupt the unconscious repetition of pain and choose a new direction. It's not always easy. In fact, it rarely is. You may feel alone in your awareness, misunderstood by the very people you came to help heal. But don't let that discourage you. Being awake in a sleeping family is not a curse, it's a calling, and your soul knew it was ready. As you become more conscious, you begin to notice something else. Archetypes, recurring roles that seem to follow you from one relationship to another. The fixer, the martyr, the outcast, the victim, the warrior. These are not just psychological labels. They're energetic identities your soul has played over and over. They're familiar because they're ancient, but you don't have to keep wearing them. When you recognize that you are playing out an old role, you gain the power to step out of it. You no longer feel compelled to save everyone, to prove your worth, to stay small, to keep others comfortable. These are signs that the soul is waking up from its long dream. You're not just reacting anymore, you're remembering, and with that remembrance comes choice. You may wonder sometimes why your journey has been so hard, why you've had to feel so much, carry so much, see so much. But here's the truth, it's because your soul is old, not in years, but in wisdom. And older souls often choose heavier contracts, not because they enjoy suffering, but because they are ready to transform it. You chose this. not from a place of punishment, but from a place of love. Your higher self saw the wounds still bleeding from lifetimes past, and with compassion said, "Let me go back, let me try again. Let me meet the same lessons with new eyes. Let me finally remember my power and break the chain once and for all." And now, here you are. The pattern is still here, but something in you is different. You're starting to see it. You're starting to feel the tug to evolve beyond it. And even if you're scared, even if you're unsure how, that willingness, that tiny spark of awareness, is all it takes to begin. This lifetime isn't separate from the others. It's part of a greater weave, a sacred design that your soul has been stitching through time. And with every moment of clarity, every conscious act of love, every time you choose presence instead of pain, you are altering the pattern, you are changing the legacy, you are healing lifetimes of energy. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're here now. Not to suffer, but to complete. Not to repeat, but to rise. Not to forget again, but to finally remember who you really are. Somewhere deep within you, there's a knowing you can't quite explain. A quiet awareness that the pain you've carried, the patterns you've repeated, and the lessons life keeps placing in your path haven't been random. They feel too exact, too precise, too emotionally charged to be coincidence. And maybe, just maybe, part of you has always sensed that this life isn't your first time around. That before you were born, before you took your first breath, before you became entangled in human fears and desires, your soul made an agreement, a sacred agreement, a soul contract. You didn't come here empty-handed. You arrived with assignments, themes, challenges, the very ones that have shaped you, broken you open, and rebuilt you again and again. Not because life is cruel, but because your soul is committed to evolving. Before this incarnation, you chose the curriculum of your earthly journey. Not with your logical mind, but with your higher consciousness. You selected the people, places, and circumstances that would most powerfully awaken you. You chose the blueprint that would lead you home to yourself. That's why some of the patterns in your life feel impossibly personal. Why certain wounds sting deeper than others. Why specific relationships pierce you in ways no one else could ever understand. Because they were designed that way. Your soul didn't come here to glide through life unscathed. It came here to remember its power by moving through the very things that once made it feel powerless. Maybe you've felt the ache of abandonment, wondering why you were left behind again and again. Or you've lived through betrayal, searching for safety in people who could never offer it. Maybe scarcity has haunted your journey, showing up not just in your bank account, but in your sense of worth. Or perhaps addiction has tangled its way through your lineage, cycling through generations until it reached you. These aren't accidents. These are soul contracts. But let's be clear, a soul contract is not a punishment. It's not a debt. It's not some karmic prison you're stuck inside forever. A soul contract is a voluntary agreement made from love. It's your higher self saying, in this lifetime, I want to master the energy of trust. And so you may find yourself surrounded by people who test that trust over and over until it becomes embodied truth rather than a fragile hope. These contracts feel intimate because they are. They play out in the most private spaces of your heart, in your childhood home, in your romantic relationships, in the mirror when no one else is around. That's where the contract unfolds. That's where your soul does its work. And sometimes it feels brutal, heavy, unfair. You may even ask why you would ever agree to something so hard. But what you forget is that your soul didn't sign up for this alone. It knew it would have help. It knew it would be guided. It knew that buried beneath the suffering would be a spark that could never be extinguished. That spark is you. And right now, if you're listening to this, it means you are beginning to remember. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the contract begins to dissolve, not because the lesson has been avoided, but because it has been integrated. And that moment doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle. You just stop reacting the way you used to. You no longer feel magnetized to the chaos you once mistook for connection. You stop chasing. you stop clinging, and without realizing it, you've stepped into ease. Ease is one of the first signs that your soul contract is nearing resolution. It's not the absence of challenge. It's the absence of struggle. You stop fighting what is. You begin to let things unfold without needing to control them. The people who once activated your deepest wounds no longer have that power, not because they've changed, but because you have. Your inner landscape has shifted. And when the inner changes, the outer must respond. Another sign is detachment, not coldness, not withdrawal, but an inner liberation that allows you to love without losing yourself. You may find that people who once held your emotional world in their hands now feel neutral, not because you don't care, but because the charge is gone, the karmic hook has been removed, the soul contract is releasing. Compassion also rises during this phase, a kind that doesn't come from spiritual obligation, but from genuine understanding. You see the people who hurt you, not as villains, but as characters playing out their own soul agreements. You recognize that their actions, while painful, were part of your awakening. And with that realization, something within you softens. You forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you do. You forgive because you're ready to be free. And then, sometimes without warning, closure arrives. It may not look how you expected. There may be no final conversation, no apology, no moment of clarity wrapped in a bow, but you'll feel it. A moment when you realize you no longer need anything from that chapter. You're done rereading it. You're ready to write something new. That's when the contract completes, not with a bang, but with a breath, a sense of peace that can't be faked. You may even grieve the ending of your contract. It sounds strange, but it happens. The pain that defined you, the identity built around the struggle, letting that go can feel disorienting. Who are you without the wound? Who are you without the pattern? That emptiness is sacred. It's the space where new timelines are born. Your soul doesn't graduate from these contracts because it's tired. It graduates because it's ready. It doesn't abandon the lesson, it absorbs it. And when it does, everything changes. Your energy shifts, your path opens, new relationships enter, ones that mirror your healed self instead of your wounded one. Opportunities arise that require your wisdom, not your pain, and life begins to feel like flow instead of fight. So, if you've felt like something is loosening, like the grip of the past is finally fading, trust that. If you've noticed you're no longer drawn to what once consumed you, believe that. These are not coincidences. These are signals. Your contract is completing. Your soul is graduating. And the most beautiful part, you don't have to know exactly what comes next. You just have to recognize what's ending, honor it, bless it, thank it for what it taught you, and then step forward. Because the next chapter doesn't come with baggage, it comes with lightness, and you've earned it. What if I told you that the chaos you've been trying to avoid your whole life was never the problem, but how you responded to it was? And now, something strange is happening. The same people, the same conversations, the same triggers that used to send you spiraling just don't anymore. It's not that life suddenly became easier or that people changed, it's that you did. You no longer bite back. You no longer need to defend yourself or explain your worth. You pause, you breathe, and somewhere deep inside, you realize this isn't about them. This is about you and the level you've risen to without even noticing. It doesn't feel like a victory at first. It feels quiet, almost boring. Where once there was fire and rage and the need to prove something, now there's just space, stillness. You witness the moment, but you don't enter it the same way. You may still feel the echo of irritation or disappointment, but it passes through you like wind through trees. It doesn't stick, it doesn't hook. That's not numbness, that's spiritual maturity, that's karmic graduation. This is the shift that nobody talks about, because it doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence. You're not shouting to be understood anymore. You're not trying to win arguments or convince someone of your goodness. You're not trying to control outcomes. You simply are, present, aware, at peace with how people choose to behave, because you finally understand it has nothing to do with you. This isn't apathy. This is emotional sovereignty. Karmic triggers are like landmines. They explode when touched, and for much of your life, you may have felt like you were always stepping on one. A comment from a parent, a betrayal from a partner, the sense of being dismissed, overlooked, not enough. These moments lit fires in you, not because you were weak, but because the wound beneath them was still raw. You were reacting from the center of your unhealed pain. But healing has a rhythm of its own. You don't even realize it's happening at first. You just notice that the explosions get quieter. The pain isn't gone, but your relationship to it has changed. And then one day, someone says the thing that used to wreck you. And you stay calm. You don't take the bait. You don't spiral into a story about why you're never appreciated or why everything always goes wrong. You don't react from the past. You respond from the present. That moment may seem small, but it is sacred. It's the soul whispering, "We're done with that." It's the sign you've been waiting for, the evidence that all the inner work, all the breakdowns, all the nights you cried for clarity, have not been in vain. This is what karmic maturity looks like. Not perfection, not the absence of emotion, but neutrality. Not the kind that flattens you into apathy, but the kind that lifts you into clarity. You begin to understand that your energy is sacred, and not every moment deserves a reaction. Not every conversation is worth entering. Not every invitation to battle is meant to be accepted. You don't need to prove your point. You don't need to correct someone's misunderstanding of you. You don't need to justify your choices. You let go of the need to be right, and lean into the joy of being free. It's strange at first. You used to define yourself by the struggle. You knew who you were, in the fight, in the emotional storms, in the narratives of pain. Letting go of that identity can feel disorienting. If you're not the wounded one anymore, then who are you? If you're not the fixer, the fighter, the one always trying to hold everything together, then what's left? That's when you realize the answer. What's left is peace. What's left is presence. What's left is the real you, no longer acting out someone else's script. You stop being a character in the old drama. You become the observer, watching with love, watching with detachment. You don't need to be in the scene to understand it. You've seen this play before. You know how it ends, and instead of getting pulled into the emotion of it, you hold space, for yourself, for others, for the moment. That's not avoidance, that's wisdom. And it's a wisdom that doesn't demand attention. It doesn't scream or try to convince. It just is. People around you might notice something's different. They might not know what changed, but they feel it. You're less reactive, more grounded, unbothered by things that used to unravel you. And here's the beautiful part. When you no longer vibrate at the frequency of old pain, those frequencies can no longer find you. The situations might arise, but they don't stick. The people might try the old patterns, but you don't participate. You've outgrown the loop. That doesn't mean you'll never feel angry or hurt again. You're still human. But now, you notice the emotion as it arises. You witness it. You give it space without feeding it. You don't become it. That shift is monumental. It means you're no longer trapped in the karmic feedback loop of reaction and regret. You've created space between the trigger and the response. And in that space, you choose. Choice is the hallmark of spiritual freedom. When you can pause in the heat of a trigger and choose peace instead of pain, love instead of fear, silence instead of defensiveness. You've reclaimed your power. Not the power to dominate, the power to remain intact, the power to remain yourself, even when the world tries to pull you into the old you. This doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes you'll regress. Sometimes the old story will feel safe and familiar. But those moments are invitations, not failures. Invitations to return to your center. To remember who you are without the noise. To breathe into the discomfort. And remember that you are not your reaction. You are the one who watches. You may have spent much of your life being pulled into emotional whirlpools, drowning in the need to be understood, validated, or vindicated. But now, something has shifted. Your peace has become more important than your pride. Your inner stability has become more valuable than your outer defense. You're not ignoring life, you're meeting it from a different place. This is the quiet liberation of karmic completion. Not a dramatic escape, but a subtle release. Like chains that fall off without a sound. like a fire that dies because it's no longer being fed. You didn't force your way here. You evolved into it. Through every heartbreak, every lesson, every moment you thought you couldn't go on, you were being refined. And now, you've become the version of yourself that doesn't need to fight the old battles anymore. There will be moments when the universe tests this new frequency. The past may knock at your door, wearing a different disguise, but you'll feel the difference. The pull won't be as strong. The hook won't find a place to sink in, not because you're cold, but because you're healed. You've earned this peace. And the fact that you no longer react the way you used to is not a sign that you're losing yourself. It's a sign that you've found yourself, and nothing, no trigger, no person, no old story can take that away from you again. There's a moment you reach when the noise that once thrilled you begins to fall silent. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, it's subtle. The same people, the same stories, the same emotional loops that used to pull you in with magnetic intensity suddenly feel different. It's not that they disappear overnight, it's that you no longer crave them. You no longer need the chaos to feel alive. You no longer chase the drama to feel connected. You no longer seek validation to feel worthy. Something inside you has shifted, and even if you can't explain it with words, you can feel it in your bones. You are no longer attracted to what used to hook you. This is the reversal of attraction, one of the clearest and most powerful signs that your karmic cycles are winding down. You're not suppressing your desires. You're not forcing yourself to walk away. You're simply losing interest in the things that no longer serve your evolution. It's not discipline, it's detachment. You've outgrown the vibration you once called home, and now the old patterns no longer match your frequency. You might notice this first in your relationships. The people who used to stir something inside you now feel distant, not because they've changed, but because you have. You don't feel the same pull toward the person who once activated your wounds. You don't feel compelled to explain yourself to someone who's never truly seen you. The conversations that once left you drained don't even begin anymore. And without any dramatic endings, those relationships start to fade. Some fall away quickly. Others dissolve gradually, like fog lifting after dawn. You stop clinging. You stop needing them to change. You stop needing to prove your growth by fixing what was never yours to fix. This isn't rejection, it's resonance, and you'll start to see it in places beyond relationships. You might realize the environments you used to tolerate feel heavy now. Maybe it's a workplace soaked in competition, or a family dynamic built on unspoken resentment. Maybe it's a group of friends who bond through gossip and surface talk. These spaces used to feel familiar. Now they feel suffocating. It's not because you're better than anyone. It's because you've begun to remember who you are, and who you are doesn't thrive in places where your authenticity must be dimmed. As this process unfolds, something beautiful begins to happen. In the space created by what's falling away, something new starts to enter. People who speak from the heart, moments that feel peaceful instead of performative, connections rooted in presence, not pain. You don't have to search for these experiences. You don't have to force them into your life. They begin to show up naturally because your energy is now aligned with them. You're not chasing anymore. You're attracting by simply being. This is one of the clearest signs that a karmic contract has reached its end. You're no longer magnetized to what once wounded you. The addiction to proving your worth dissolves. The need to be chosen disappears. The urgency to fix or rescue or control fades away. In its place, you find stillness. And from that stillness, a new kind of love begins to grow. One that isn't built on survival. One that doesn't require pain to feel real. One that reflects who you've become, not who you were trying to heal. And yet, this reversal can feel disorienting, because the ego part of you might still whisper that you're avoiding something, that you're giving up, that you're abandoning people. But the truth is, you're not avoiding. You're aligning. You're no longer feeding cycles that keep you small. You're choosing peace over performance. You're honoring your nervous system. You're listening to your body, and you're realizing that peace is not boring, it's sacred. There may even be a moment when you grieve what's falling away. That's natural. Letting go of what once defined you can feel like a kind of death. You may miss the rush of intensity, the highs and lows, the emotional roller coaster that once felt like love, but that grief is just your system recalibrating. You're adjusting to a new normal, one where stability doesn't mean stagnation, one where quiet doesn't mean emptiness, one where love doesn't hurt. You may also feel a strange emptiness in the in-between space, the void between what was and what's coming. Don't rush to fill it, let it be. This is where integration happens. This is where your soul anchors into its new frequency. This is where you sit in the silence and realize you are whole without the noise. You are safe without the chaos. You are enough without the audience. The reversal of attraction is one of the most empowering phases of spiritual awakening, because it marks the moment you stop being ruled by your unconscious patterns. It's when you start choosing from clarity instead of compulsion. When your energy stops mirroring your past and starts inviting your future. You're no longer operating from survival. You're creating from alignment. And here's what no one tells you about this stage. You don't need to explain your shift. You don't owe anyone a justification for your peace. Some people may not understand why you've changed. They may accuse you of being distant or cold, but they're just witnessing a version of you they no longer recognize. The version of you that no longer bends to fit their comfort, that no longer sacrifices truth for belonging, that no longer says yes when your soul is screaming no. You're not broken, you're becoming. You're not abandoning anyone, you're returning to yourself, and those who are meant to walk with you on this next part of the path will feel that. They won't demand the old you, they'll celebrate the new one. They won't guilt you back into patterns you've outgrown. They'll rise with you or release you, and either way, it will be a gift. So if you're noticing that you're no longer pulled toward what used to define you, trust that. If the chaos no longer excites you, if the drama feels exhausting instead of intoxicating, if the approval you once craved now feels irrelevant, know this: you're not shutting down, you're waking up. You're healing at the level of identity. You're shedding the energy of who you had to be in order to survive your past. And now, you're making space for who you were always meant to be. The reversal of attraction isn't something you force, it's something you allow. It happens when the soul has integrated the lesson, when the nervous system has healed from the trauma, when the inner child feels safe enough to stop seeking danger disguised as love. This is your becoming. This is your turning point. Let what's leaving go in peace. Welcome what's arriving with grace. You are no longer drawn to what wounds you. You are drawn to what honors you. And that is how you know the cycle is ending. What if I told you that the ache inside you, the quiet sense that your life is meant for more, is not restlessness, but remembrance? That you're not just waking up to a new phase of your life, but to the truth of why you came here in the first place. You're beginning to feel it, aren't you? That subtle but powerful shift. The urgency to survive is fading. The panic to chase, to scramble, to fight for your place in the world is dissolving. And in its place is a softer pull, a whisper that doesn't shout for success or recognition, but gently calls you into service. Not out of obligation, but out of alignment. This is what happens when a soul outgrows survival. For so long, life may have felt like a test you had to pass. You spent years trying to prove yourself, fighting to be seen, scrambling to be enough, searching for safety in all the ways you were taught would bring you peace. You may have chased the job, the validation, the status, or the perfect relationship, believing that once you had it, you'd finally feel secure. But now, something is different. The hunger for those things isn't as sharp anymore. The desperation has quieted. It's not that you don't still want to grow or succeed, but you no longer feel like your life depends on it. That grip has loosened, and in the space where fear used to live, something sacred is blooming. A new kind of yearning, one that isn't about what you can get, but what you can give. Not because you're trying to earn your worth, but because you finally know it. You're not serving to be loved, you're serving because you are love, and that changes everything. This shift is not always loud or dramatic. It's quiet and internal. You begin to notice that you care less about climbing and more about contributing. Less about being first and more about being present. You're not obsessed with being the best. You just want to be useful, and not in a way that drains you, but in a way that feels natural. Your energy wants to flow outward. Your wisdom wants to be shared. Your light wants to touch others, not to impress them, but to remind them of their own. You might start to feel called to speak, to teach, to heal, to write, or simply to be a safe space for others. These callings don't come with blueprints. They come with quiet nudges. You find yourself offering guidance to a friend and realizing the words didn't come from your mind, they came from somewhere deeper. You begin to sense pain in people before they speak it. You notice that others feel safe around you, as if your presence alone creates space for something unspoken. You don't have to try. It just happens. And here's the beautiful part. You're not doing it to gain anything. There's no scoreboard anymore. No ego behind the kindness. No attachment to outcome. You're no longer asking, what do I get in return? You're simply offering what you have because it overflows from you. Because the healing you've done, the lessons you've integrated, the compassion you've cultivated, it's all real now. It lives in you. And when something is real, it wants to express itself. You've stopped surviving and started serving. Not because you have to, but because it's who you are now. You used to need approval. You used to want people to see how far you've come. Now you understand that your path was never about impressing others. It was about becoming someone who could light the path for others. You don't need recognition anymore. You just want to make a difference, no matter how small. You could uplift one person or 1,000, and it would feel the same, because your value isn't tied to scale. It's tied to sincerity. Service becomes your purpose, but not in the way the world defines purpose. You're not looking for a title or a stage. You're not interested in performance. You're interested in presence. You want to listen when others speak. You want to offer your truth when it's needed. You want to help people remember that healing is possible, that love still exists, that there is another way. There's a deep humility in this phase, a softness. You don't feel above anyone. You don't feel more awakened or enlightened. If anything, you feel more connected to everyone. You see their struggles and know them as your own. You recognize the masks, the wounds, the defenses, and instead of judging, you feel compassion. You've been there. Maybe not in the same story, but in the same energy. And now you don't want to fix people. You want to hold space for them, to reflect back the light they forgot they had. This is what divine service looks like. It's not martyrdom. It's not self-sacrifice. It's not running yourself into exhaustion for the sake of being good. It's showing up with wholeness. It's knowing when to give and when to rest, when to speak and when to listen. It's knowing that your being is just as powerful as your doing. Sometimes the greatest act of service is your presence. Sometimes it's your silence. Sometimes it's your ability to hold joy in a world that feels heavy. There's nothing left to prove anymore. Only something to offer, and that something is you. Your wisdom, your peace, your authenticity. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. You're not trying to save the world. You're simply showing up as yourself, and in doing so, you're becoming a permission slip for others to do the same. You may find that people begin to ask you how you stay so calm, how you knew what to say, how you found your path, and you'll struggle to explain it in words. Because it wasn't one big revelation. It was thousands of small ones. It was choosing growth when you could have chosen bitterness. It was returning to love when fear felt easier. It was staying soft when life gave you every reason to harden. It was remembering your soul in a world that taught you to forget. Now, everything you've walked through becomes medicine. Not just for you, but for others. You become a living library of experience. And people come to you not for advice, but for energy, for presence, for reminders of what's possible. You were never meant to stay in survival. That was just the beginning, a place to awaken, to remember, to choose. But now, you're stepping into something greater. A life not driven by need, but by offering. A life where success is measured not by how much you take in, but by how much you give from a full and overflowing heart. And as you walk this path of quiet service, you'll find something you never expected. Peace, not the kind you chase, the kind that arrives when you're aligned, you'll realize that the purpose you spent years trying to find was never somewhere out there. It was always within you, waiting, whispering. And now that you've answered the call, the world around you begins to respond. Because when you stop surviving and start serving, you don't just change your life, you change the frequency of the entire world. There comes a moment when you stop waiting for the apology that never comes. Not because you've given up on justice or because you've decided the past no longer matters, but because something inside you shifts. The ache to be seen, the desire to be validated, the craving for someone to finally say, "I'm sorry, I hurt you," begins to lose its grip. You begin to realize that healing doesn't actually depend on someone else's words. It depends on your willingness to release the story that has kept your soul in repetition. Forgiveness, at this level, is not about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the invisible chain that has kept you tethered to a moment you've already survived. At first, this realization can feel disorienting. You might look back on what was done to you and wonder how it's possible to let it go without acknowledgement, without resolution, without the kind of closure you always thought you needed to move on. But that's the thing. The closure you've been searching for out there was always something you had the power to create within yourself. When you no longer seek an apology to validate your experience, you reclaim your power. You stop needing the past to unfold differently, and in that space, a quiet kind of peace begins to settle in. You're not pretending it didn't hurt. You're not erasing the betrayal, the abandonment, the cruelty, or the silence that followed. You're simply choosing to stop carrying it in your body. You're choosing to stop rehearsing the pain every time their name comes up, or a memory resurfaces. The pattern dissolves when the need to relive it does. That doesn't mean you forget. It means the wound no longer defines you. The pain that once ruled your thoughts becomes something else entirely. It becomes wisdom. It becomes insight. It becomes the very soil from which your compassion grows. This kind of forgiveness doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look like a dramatic declaration. It doesn't require a conversation. It shows up quietly. Sometimes you only realize it's happened when you see their face in your mind and notice that your stomach no longer tightens, or when you tell the story and there's no venom left in your voice. Just truth. Just clarity. Just a sense of distance that feels healthy, not bitter. Forgiveness in this form doesn't come from spiritual obligation. It's not about being the bigger person. It's not about proving how evolved you are. It arises naturally from understanding, from seeing the other person not as the villain in your story, but as a soul wrapped in their own pain, operating from their own wounds, likely unconscious of the damage they caused. This understanding doesn't excuse their actions. It doesn't absolve them of responsibility, but it does allow you to stop carrying the weight of what they did. You start to see that their actions weren't really about you. They were about their own limitations, their own inner conflict, their own unmet needs. You happened to be in the blast radius. You were collateral in someone else's war with themselves. And knowing that doesn't make it okay, but it does make it clearer. And clarity is the beginning of liberation. There is a sacred maturity in this kind of forgiveness. It's the moment you stop waiting for the past to fix itself. You no longer expect people to become who they weren't capable of being back then. You accept that they may never understand the depth of how they affected you. And still, you choose to heal. You choose to release yourself from the loop, because your freedom matters more than your anger. This isn't bypassing, it's integration. You've felt the grief, you've honored the rage, you've named the betrayal, and now, you're choosing not to carry it any longer. Because dragging it with you has become too heavy. Because the cost of holding on is no longer worth it. Because the identity built around the wound has started to feel too small for who you're becoming. You may find yourself forgiving people who never asked for it. Forgiving people who are no longer alive. Forgiving people who still don't think they did anything wrong. And that's okay. Because the forgiveness is not for them. It's for the part of you that deserves to live unburdened, the part of you that no longer wants to define love through pain, the part of you that's ready to move forward without dragging the ghosts of yesterday into every tomorrow. And sometimes, the one you'll need to forgive most deeply is yourself, for not knowing better, for staying too long, for dimming your light to make others comfortable. For the ways you abandoned yourself in order to belong, that's part of the karmic healing too, because as long as you carry shame for who you were when you were doing your best to survive, the pattern stays alive. Self-forgiveness is not about condoning every choice. It's about acknowledging your humanity. It's about meeting your past self with compassion instead of condemnation. The most beautiful thing about this stage of your journey is that nothing outside of you has to change. No one has to say the right words. No one has to come back and fix what they broke. You get to choose healing because it's what your soul is ready for. You get to transmute pain into power simply by refusing to keep feeding the cycle. You get to remember that forgiveness doesn't erase the past, it just untethers your future from it. This is how you know your soul is graduating. This is how you know the karmic cycle is dissolving. You begin to realize that peace matters more than proving a point, that your nervous system prefers truth over tension. That love doesn't have to be painful to be real. You start to forgive not to reconcile but to release. You start to let go not because they deserve it but because you do. There is nothing weak about this kind of release. It is one of the most courageous things a soul can do, to choose peace when war was an option, to choose softness when anger feels justified, to choose the present when the past still echoes, and when you choose it, something shifts in your energy. You become less reactive, more grounded, more whole, and without even trying, you begin to call in experiences and relationships that match that wholeness. You are not a victim of your past. You are the alchemist of your present, and your forgiveness is the fire that transforms memory into medicine. Let it move through you. Let it lighten you. You don't need closure to be free. You only need willingness. And once you stop waiting for someone else to give you peace, you realize you've had the power to create it all along. What if I told you that the situations you're facing right now, the ones that look eerily similar to your past, aren't signs that you've failed, but confirmations that you've grown? That the universe isn't testing you like some teacher trying to catch you off guard, but simply holding up a mirror so you can see yourself clearly. Karma doesn't come back to punish. It comes back to reflect. And in this moment, if you look closely, you'll see something extraordinary. The pattern may be the same, but you are not. There's a strange kind of magic that happens when an old lesson shows up again. At first, it can feel disheartening. You may think, I thought I was done with this. You feel the familiar rise of emotion, the same conversation, the same betrayal, the same feeling of being overlooked, triggered, or misunderstood. It stirs something in your body, a memory, a reaction. But then, almost without trying, you respond differently. You breathe, you soften, you don't need to win. You don't need to prove, you don't need to defend. And right there, in that moment of presence, you realize the cycle is no longer controlling you, it's completing. Growth doesn't always look like ascension. Sometimes it looks like standing in the middle of your old storm and not getting swept away. You're not rising above it, detached and aloof. You're right there, present with what is, and still choosing peace. That's not avoidance. That's evolution. That's the soul saying, I've seen this before. I know what this is, and I no longer need to engage with it the way I once did. In the past, you may have reacted with anger, desperation, fear, or the need to fix. You may have spiraled into self-doubt or lashed out in pain. Those responses were never wrong, they were simply signs of where you were in your journey. But now, something is different. You don't feel the same urgency. The trigger no longer controls your nervous system. The need to defend yourself feels unnecessary. The drama that once hooked you feels almost hollow. And it's not because you don't care. You do. You care deeply. But your care now comes from compassion, not from attachment. You've learned that not every wound needs a bandage. Some just need time. Some just need your stillness, your grounded presence, your quiet knowing that you are not the sum of your reactions, but the awareness that sees them. There is an incredible peace that begins to rise in your life when you recognize that you don't need to control what comes back around. You just need to meet it differently. The people may still challenge you. The situations may still echo old pain, but the grip is gone. The hook doesn't land. That's the mark of healing. Not that life changes instantly, but that your relationship to life does. You start responding to conflict with peace. Not because you've become passive, but because you've become powerful. You're not sacrificing your truth. You're embodying it. You can hold space for disagreement without collapsing. You can honor someone else's pain without making it your own. You can say no without guilt. You can walk away without resentment. You can stay present without losing yourself. And when fear rises, because it still will, you meet it with presence. You don't try to push it away or pretend it's not there. You breathe into it. You ask it what it needs. You let it sit beside you like an old friend who no longer terrifies you. That is mastery, not the absence of fear, but the capacity to hold it with love. It's a strange feeling, walking through familiar fires and not getting burned. You remember how much it hurt the first time. You remember the nights you cried, the confusion, the heartbreak. And yet now, there is a quiet clarity, not because the fire is gone, but because you've become flame-proof, not invulnerable, but anchored, not numb, but wise. Karma isn't a punishment system, it's a reflection system. It brings things around again so you can see your own evolution. Not so the universe can test your strength, but so you can witness it. Every time you don't react the old way, every time you hold peace instead of chaos, love instead of resentment, stillness instead of panic, you are breaking the cycle. You are rewriting your soul's story in real time. There may still be moments where the old version of you tries to resurface, where you feel the pull to prove yourself, to defend your ego, to react out of habit. And that's okay. Those moments are not failures, they are invitations, reminders, gentle nudges asking, do you really want to go back to that version of yourself? And every time you say no, not through resistance but through remembrance, you are reclaiming your power. You might notice that some people in your life don't understand this new version of you. They expect the old reactions, they push the old buttons, and when nothing happens, when you stay grounded, they get confused. Some might even get angry. That's because you've shifted out of the dynamic they were used to, and not everyone is ready for that. Some people are still addicted to the dance, but you've left the dance floor. You're not playing the same music, you're not in that rhythm anymore. And that's okay too. Evolution can feel lonely at first, not because you're alone, but because you're making space for the people and experiences that resonate with your new frequency. And those things take time to find you, but they will, because as you shift internally, the external world begins to shift around you. Don't mistake quiet for regression, don't mistake stillness for stagnation. The absence of chaos is not the absence of life, it's the presence of alignment. You are entering a new relationship with yourself, and through that, a new relationship with the world. You may not be able to explain your transformation to others. It may not make sense to them why you're no longer reactive, why you walk away from drama, why you choose silence over defensiveness. Let them wonder. Let them feel the change without needing to understand it. Your growth isn't for them to validate, it's for you to embody. And you are embodying it, every day. Even when it's quiet, even when it's subtle, even when no one sees it, but you. Old lessons may return, but they return for one reason: to show you that you are not who you used to be. And that, in itself, is a form of grace, a sacred mirror reflecting back your evolution. Not to pull you back into the past, but to show you that you're ready to move forward. So when the familiar rises, meet it with presence. When the old pain knocks, answer it with peace. When fear whispers, respond with love. Because you're not in the same place anymore. You've changed, and that changes everything. Something begins to happen as your soul nears the edge of karmic completion. At first, it's subtle. A strange sensation that time no longer moves the way it used to. Days blur together, yet certain moments feel stretched, suspended, as if something unseen is holding space for you to notice. Other times, you swear you've lived a moment before. A conversation, a feeling, even a smell pulls you back to something that hasn't happened yet, or something that already has. You might look at the clock, and it's always the same time. You hear the same phrase from 3 different people in one day. You dream something, and wake up to see it play out hours later. It feels like coincidence, but it happens too often to dismiss. The linear world begins to bend, and you realize time is not what you thought. This distortion isn't a malfunction, it's an awakening. As your karmic patterns dissolve, your relationship to time starts to shift, because time itself is a karmic construct. It was created to give your lessons structure, to stretch your soul lessons across lifetimes, to let you grow, fall, repeat, rise. But when you begin to complete what you came here to learn, the scaffolding of time begins to loosen. Your soul no longer needs to be held inside its rigid lines. And that's when you begin to sense it, time folding in on itself, past bleeding into present, future whispering into now. You are moving between dimensions without even trying. This can feel disorienting. There may be days when you feel ancient and new at once. You'll remember things you never learned in this life. You'll meet people who feel familiar before they say a word. You'll feel drawn to places you've never been but somehow recognize. This isn't fantasy. This is the memory of your soul, surfacing through the cracks of time. As the karmic veil lifts, you begin to remember beyond the veil, because now you are no longer bound to the same loops. You're not in the echo anymore. You're standing in the signal. One of the clearest signs that this is happening is the sudden appearance of synchronicities. Numbers repeat. Songs play with uncanny timing. You think of someone and they call. You wonder about a decision and a billboard gives you the answer. You feel something coming and it arrives before you can explain why. These signs are not just playful winks from the universe. They are confirmations that your energy is aligning. You are no longer chasing life. You're in dialogue with it. Your inner world is matching the rhythm of the unseen. Repeating numbers especially become a kind of language. You might see 1111 when you're on the brink of an internal breakthrough. 222 when you've been questioning your path. 444 when you're being reminded you're protected. These patterns aren't random, they're vibrations encoded into the structure of reality. When you see them, it means you're tuning in. You're beginning to listen on a deeper level. You're no longer brushing off the magic. You're responding to it. Dreams become more vivid too. Not just the wild, symbolic dreams of stress or desire, but the ones that feel like messages. You may dream of people who've passed and wake up with clarity or closure. You may find yourself in places that don't exist here but feel more real than waking life. You may receive names, instructions, fragments of something larger. The dream world becomes an extension of your healing. Because when the soul is no longer weighed down by old patterns, it begins to roam. It begins to speak. The thinning of the veil is not something you control. It's something that happens naturally as you step into coherence with your soul. When you're no longer resisting your path, when you're no longer looping in pain, you start to rise in frequency. And at that level, reality becomes more transparent. You begin to see the patterns beneath the patterns. You realize that life has been trying to communicate with you all along. You just weren't in the space to receive it. Now, the signs come faster. The symbols become clearer, not because they suddenly appeared, but because you finally slowed down enough to see. This state of higher alignment isn't about perfection. It's not about being blissed out or disconnected from the human experience. In fact, it's the opposite. You become more present, more grounded, more attuned to the subtle shifts of energy within and around you. You begin to realize that the universe isn't far away. It's right here, responding to your vibration in real time. And when you shift, it shifts with you. You'll notice that the more you honor your intuition, the more life meets you with grace. The more you say no to what depletes you, the more your path opens. The more you tell the truth, the more truth finds you. This is what it means to be in alignment. It's not about avoiding discomfort. It's about being so in tune with your soul that you stop resisting the current that's always been trying to carry you forward. Sometimes, this sensitivity can feel overwhelming. When the veil thins, your senses sharpen. You may feel more emotional than usual. You may pick up on other people's energy without trying. You may feel unexplainable waves of joy or grief or knowing. This is your soul's nervous system recalibrating. Don't rush to fix it. Let yourself feel. Let yourself integrate. These sensations are not signs that something is wrong. They're evidence that your body is catching up to the new reality you've stepped into. You might also find that your perception of time becomes fluid. Hours pass in what feels like minutes, or 5 minutes stretches into what feels like eternity. This isn't a glitch. It's your consciousness detaching from the rigid timeline. When you're in flow, time becomes irrelevant. You stop measuring your life by calendars and start measuring it by presence. And in those moments, you're no longer just surviving time. You're co-creating with it. The more you allow these experiences, the more they deepen. The more you trust them, the more they multiply. Because you're not going crazy, you're waking up. Your reality is responding to your frequency. And the rules that once defined your life no longer apply in the same way. What used to feel distant now feels intimate. What once felt separate now feels unified. This is what happens when karma dissolves. The density lifts, the illusion of separation begins to fade, and time, once your teacher, becomes your companion. It bends for you. It slows down to let you feel more. It speeds up to move you past what no longer serves. It dances with your evolution. So if you're seeing signs, feeling strange time shifts, noticing patterns that seem too perfect to be chance, know this: it's not your imagination, it's your alignment. You are stepping into a reality that mirrors your inner world with precision, and that's not fantasy, that's mastery. What if I told you that the strange sensations you've been experiencing lately, the vivid dreams, the subtle chills, the thoughts that seem to come from nowhere aren't just quirks of your imagination, but signals from your soul? That what feels new is actually ancient, and what feels mysterious is simply memory returning to the surface. You may not even realize it at first, but something deep within you is beginning to stir, not in loud, obvious ways, but in whispers, in synchronicities, in quiet knowings that can't be explained. Your gifts are awakening, and they're doing it gently, reverently, as if they've been waiting for this exact moment all along. There is a sacred unfolding that happens when karmic debris begins to clear. For so long, your energy has been tangled in survival, in lessons, in the emotional weight of experiences meant to shape and refine you. But now that weight is lifting, the emotional storms are softening, the noise is settling into silence, and in that silence, your true essence has space to emerge. This is the beginning of remembrance, not the learning of something new, but the return of something ancient, something that has always belonged to you. You may find yourself sensing things before they happen. A name will drop into your awareness seconds before someone calls. A thought will flash in your mind that seems to belong to someone else. You'll walk into a room and feel everything that no one is saying. This isn't you becoming sensitive. This is you finally tuning into the frequencies that have always been there. Frequencies you were born to receive. You don't need a ritual or a title to be intuitive. You already are. You always were. It's just that your inner static was too loud to hear the guidance before. Now, things are different. Your dreams become more vivid. You wake up with symbols etched into your memory, feelings that linger like echoes. Sometimes you'll dream of people you haven't spoken to in years, only to hear from them the next day. Other times, you'll dream of places you've never been, but that feel unmistakably familiar. These are not random. Dreams are one of the most direct ways the soul speaks when the conscious mind is resting. They are messages, metaphors, and sometimes even memories from beyond this lifetime. You'll start to notice how often you know things without knowing how. You'll be in a conversation and say something that surprises even you, something you didn't plan, something that feels channeled. And it will land in the heart of the person listening like medicine. You may dismiss it at first. You may think it was just a lucky guess or an intuitive moment, but it happens again and again, until you begin to realize that it's not a coincidence, it's not random. It's the voice of your soul speaking through you, a voice you've always had, but only now are beginning to trust. And as you begin to trust that voice, it becomes stronger. Your relationship with your own energy deepens. You start to feel when your spirit is being pulled in a certain direction. You make choices not based on logic, but on resonance. What feels right? What feels aligned? You walk into a place and immediately know if it's for you or not. You meet someone new and sense their energy before they say a word. This isn't fantasy, this is frequency. And you're finally attuned to it. Your body becomes more sensitive, not in a way that weakens you, but in a way that empowers you. You notice how certain foods make you feel heavy, how certain environments leave you drained, how certain conversations either energize or deplete you. This sensitivity is not a curse, it's a compass. Your body is not betraying you, it's guiding you. As the karmic fog lifts, your vessel becomes clearer, more precise, more receptive. And through it, your soul begins to speak. The shift is subtle, but unmistakable. You're not just healing anymore, you're remembering what it feels like to live from intuition, to trust your inner compass, to be guided not by fear, but by truth. This doesn't mean you'll never feel doubt again, but doubt no longer drowns out your knowing. You can hear the doubt, acknowledge it, and still move in the direction your soul is pointing. There may be moments when you question yourself, when you wonder if you're making it all up, because the world you were raised in didn't teach you to trust your inner world. It taught you to look outward, to seek validation, to ask for permission. But your awakening gifts will not wait for permission. They are organic, they are sacred, and they are yours. Sometimes you'll feel the energy of a room before you walk into it. Sometimes you'll know someone's pain without them ever telling you. You'll feel compelled to reach out to someone without knowing why, only to find out they were in need. These aren't coincidences, they're invitations. Your soul is asking you to listen, to believe what you feel, to stop brushing off your own knowing as just a feeling. It's not just a feeling, it's the language of your spirit. And perhaps the most profound part of this awakening is how natural it feels. You're not striving, you're not forcing. These gifts come online, like lights in a house you've lived in forever, but only now discovered how to turn on. One room at a time, the house becomes brighter. Not because you're becoming someone new, but because you're seeing what was always there. This process doesn't require a label. You don't have to call yourself psychic, empathic, or intuitive if those words don't feel right. You don't have to adopt anyone else's language. Your experience is valid simply because it's yours. And as you lean into it, as you stop dismissing the whispers, the knowing, the quiet downloads that come in stillness, you begin to embody the truth. Your soul is reawakening. You may notice that your creativity sharpens too. Ideas come faster. Inspiration hits without warning. You feel drawn to create, to express, to write, to dance, to paint, to speak. Not for recognition, but for release, because something is moving through you, and it needs to be shared. That too is a gift. That too is remembrance. This isn't about becoming special. It's about becoming real, stripping away everything that dulled your magic and stepping fully into your essence. You're not stepping into power to impress anyone. You're stepping into truth to align with your own divine design. These awakenings will continue. They'll expand as you stay open. And yes, sometimes they will confuse you, even overwhelm you. But they are here to support you, not to distract you. They are not separate from your healing. They are the result of it. As karma clears, your soul reclaims its higher tools. You begin to operate from a level beyond thought, beyond conditioning. You start to live in partnership with the unseen, trusting that what you sense is just as real as what you see. So if your dreams feel louder, if your intuition is more insistent, if you're suddenly hearing guidance in the silence, don't ignore it. This is your soul remembering its voice. This is your spirit returning to its natural rhythm, and you don't need to understand every part of it to honor it. You just need to listen, to trust, to receive, because you are not just healing anymore. You are remembering who you really are. There comes a strange moment on the spiritual path when everything goes quiet. Not in a peaceful, blissed-out kind of way, but in a way that feels eerily still, like the world has stopped moving and no one told you why. You look around and nothing is falling apart, but nothing is really coming together either. The chaos that once defined your life seems to have evaporated. The intensity, the emotional storms, the endless drama you once thought you hated, they're gone. And now you're left in a space you didn't expect. It's calm. Too calm. And it unsettles you in a way you can't quite name. This is what some call divine boredom. It's not laziness, it's not stagnation, it's a sacred pause, a recalibration. A stillness that comes after deep spiritual work, when karmic cycles begin to close and your nervous system finally comes down from survival mode. For so long, your life has been filled with emotional spikes. You've been navigating conflict, loss, healing, and transformation. Your system got used to being on alert, constantly bracing for the next lesson. And now, for the first time in what feels like lifetimes, there's nothing. Just stillness. At first, you might interpret this stillness as emptiness. You may feel restless, agitated, even a little lost. You start to wonder if you've done something wrong, if the magic is fading, if you've somehow slipped off your path. But what you're really experiencing is not the absence of growth, it's the space before expansion, the quiet that comes before the next octave of your soul's journey. You're not regressing. You're being reoriented. This phase can be deceiving because there's nothing flashy about it. You're not having massive spiritual downloads. You're not manifesting new realities overnight. You're not breaking down crying every other day. You're just here, in a kind of limbo. Daily life moves forward. You eat, you sleep, you take care of what needs to be done. But under the surface, something deeper is settling. Something ancient is integrating. You've done the inner work, and now your soul is adjusting to what that means. And here's the part that may surprise you. Boredom is part of healing. When you've been addicted to chaos, when your identity has been wrapped in pain, stillness can feel unbearable. Not because there's something wrong with it, but because it's unfamiliar. You're used to chasing something, running from something, fixing something. Now, there's nothing to chase, nothing to fix, and that leaves you face to face with yourself in the rawest way. In this space, you may feel uninspired. You might lose interest in things that once thrilled you. Even spiritual practices can feel dry or mechanical. Meditation feels like sitting in a void. Journaling brings up blank pages. The high of constant transformation is gone, and all that remains is the simplicity of being. This is where the ego starts to panic. It whispers that you've lost your way, that you're wasting time, that you're supposed to be doing something. But the soul knows better. The soul knows that this quiet is not a mistake. It's a message. You are being prepared for something new. But before the next version of your life can arrive, you have to let go of the energetic residue of the old one. This boredom is the vacuum that forms when karma stops running the show. It's the echo of all the patterns you've released. It's the silence left behind when the inner noise dies down, and while it may feel like nothing is happening, everything is happening. Subtly, slowly, organically, your soul is recalibrating to a new frequency. Your body is learning what safety actually feels like. Your mind is unwinding from the habit of overthinking. Your energy is reconfiguring itself without the weight of your past identities, and all of that takes time. The same way the soil needs to rest between harvests, you too must lie fallow. Not because you're broken, but because something beautiful is gestating beneath the surface. And yes, it may be uncomfortable. There will be days you want to scream just to feel something again. You'll miss the clarity that came from crisis. You'll wonder if your passion has disappeared. But in truth, it's not gone. It's simply dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken in a new form. You're not meant to stay in this quiet forever, but you are meant to be here now. This is the in-between. The hallway between two rooms, the breath between two lifetimes. You've closed the door on the karmic cycle that shaped you. And you haven't yet fully stepped into the new landscape that's forming. You're floating in the void, and it's okay to float. It's okay to rest. You don't have to rush your becoming. During this time, life may seem stripped down to its essentials. Your relationships may quiet. Opportunities may slow. You may feel disconnected from your old motivations. That's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of purification. The external world is catching up to your internal shift. The universe is making space for the new by pausing the old. And even though your outer life might feel still, your inner life is anything but. There's a quiet intelligence moving through you, rearranging your path in unseen ways. Insights may come softly, like whispers on the edge of sleep. Your dreams may deepen, Your intuition may feel less like a flash and more like a steady presence. The transformation is subtle now, but it's real. Eventually, something will spark again. You'll wake up one morning and feel a glimmer of inspiration, a new idea, a pull toward a direction you hadn't considered. It will feel fresh, but also familiar, like remembering something you never knew you forgot. That spark is your next octave. It arrives not in the noise, but in the space the boredom created. So if you're in that stillness now, if life feels too calm, too flat, too quiet, trust it. Trust that your soul knows how to rest. Trust that boredom is not the absence of purpose but the precursor to it. Trust that when nothing seems to be happening, everything is being rearranged for what's next. Let yourself be still. Let yourself be ordinary. Let the silence speak, because the emptiness you're sitting in isn't a void. It's a womb. And what's forming inside it will require the version of you that is no longer fueled by chaos, but by clarity. You haven't lost your path. You've simply stepped into a higher chapter, one that doesn't rush, one that doesn't chase, one that allows space for miracles to grow in silence. What if I told you that the feeling you've been calling lost is actually something much more sacred than that? That the emptiness you're standing in, the space where the old no longer fits but the new hasn't arrived yet, isn't a mistake or a delay. It's a threshold, a spiritual pause, a moment of divine incubation where your soul is catching its breath after lifetimes of movement. You feel the weight lifting. You feel the past loosening its grip. You've released so much. You've surrendered control. But now, you're staring into something wide and wordless, and there's no clear direction, no roadmap, just space and silence. It's not what you expected, is it? You thought that once the karmic patterns began to dissolve, once you let go of the old identities, the pain, the cycles, that clarity would rush in, that your purpose would announce itself, that everything would click into place. But instead, you're here, in between. No longer who you were, not yet who you're becoming. This space can feel disorienting, even frightening, because your mind wants answers. Your ego wants certainty. It wants a plan, a structure, a way to know that this release has led somewhere solid. But the soul doesn't operate on the timeline of the mind. The soul lives in rhythm, and sometimes the most powerful thing it can do is stop, breathe, recalibrate. This is what the mystics call the void. Not a place of nothingness, but of pure potential. A womb of creation where the next version of your life is forming in silence. It's not confusion, it's construction. It's the quiet unfolding of a new path being born from within you. This liminal space is sacred. It's where the soul rests after completing a karmic cycle. It's the breath between lifetimes. You may feel like you've lost your direction, but that's because you're no longer following the map of your old self. The compass you used to rely on doesn't work anymore because it was designed for survival, for healing, for navigating lessons that are now complete. So the stillness you're in is not a failure, it's a signal that something new is coming. That something new is you. But first, the silence. You may notice that your desires have changed. Things you once pursued with urgency now feel flat. The roles you played so well no longer feel authentic. The goals you set don't move you like they used to. It's not that you're lazy, it's not that you're unmotivated. It's that your soul is no longer interested in creating from the energy of the past, and until the new alignment fully reveals itself, the in-between becomes your home. This in-between can be uncomfortable. You may feel pressure to figure it out, to make a move, to do something. But part of your evolution is learning how to be in the unknown without collapsing, to trust the void, to sit inside the pause without rushing to fill it. That takes courage, it takes trust, and it takes a deep remembering that you are being guided, even here. Your nervous system might resist this stage. After all, it's spent lifetimes being on high alert, preparing for the next challenge, scanning for the next wound. But now there is no danger. There is no battle, there is only peace. And peace, though beautiful, can feel unfamiliar at first. When you've lived through chaos, peace can feel like nothing. But it's not nothing. It's everything. It's the soil where your next chapter begins to root. There is a kind of grief that surfaces here too, not because you miss the pain, but because letting go even of struggle creates space. And space can feel lonely. You might feel a longing you can't name, a mourning for parts of yourself you didn't even realize you were ready to release. This grief is holy. It is proof that you have changed, that the soul you are now has shed old skins, and though you don't yet know what's next, you are walking with a deeper self than ever before. In this space, old ambitions may fall away, relationships may shift or dissolve, your identity might feel blurry, like it's melting. Let it. This is not the end. It's the undoing before the becoming, the stripping away of everything that was built on fear, performance, or illusion. And yes, it may feel like a void, but that void is where all the most sacred things begin, in stillness, in darkness, in waiting. You're not lost, you're free, free from the old rules, free from the inner wars, free from the patterns that defined your past. And now, you're being invited to create from a place you've never lived from before. A place not rooted in reaction, but in resonance, not in proving, but in presence. This moment of transition is the soul's deep inhale before the exhale of purpose. And when the time is right, that exhale will come. The direction will return. The clarity will rise not as a lightning bolt, but as a quiet knowing that emerges from within. But until then, be gentle with yourself. Let the silence be a sanctuary, not a punishment. Let the pause be permission to rest, to just be. You've done the hard work. You've walked through fire and chosen healing when it would have been easier to numb. You've shown up to your life, to your shadows, to your growth. And now, you're allowed to rest, to exist without rushing, to sit in the fertile emptiness that comes after true release. You may not be able to name what's next, but you can feel it, like the first light of dawn before the sun rises, like a heartbeat beneath the silence. You don't need to force it. It will come when it's time. And when it does, you will be ready, because everything you've released has created the space to receive it. So if you find yourself here on the edge of the old, facing the unknown, know this: you are not broken. You are not lost. You are standing at the threshold of your next becoming. And this stillness, this quiet, this sacred in-between, is the birthplace of everything beautiful that is still to come. There's a moment you reach where everything feels different, but nothing looks the same. It's subtle at first, like the volume on the past has been turned all the way down. You wake up and realize you're no longer bracing for the next emotional storm. You're not scanning the horizon for another lesson to survive. You're not waiting for the other shoe to drop, because deep down, you know there is no shoe. Something has ended, something ancient, something that has followed you across lifetimes. The karmic wheel has stopped spinning, and now, you're standing on the edge of something new. But instead of feeling triumphant, you feel still, you feel clear, and maybe even a little disoriented, because no one really tells you what comes after the cycle ends. Completion isn't a finish line, it's a portal. When you've lived so long inside the patterns of pain, healing, and self-reflection, it's easy to confuse resolution with arrival. You think you're reaching the end, but you're actually stepping into the beginning. Not the beginning of another test, but the beginning of creation. The space where you finally stop reacting to life and start choosing how you want it to feel. It's a sacred threshold, but it can be unsettling at first. Because you've spent so long learning how to survive the loop, that freedom feels foreign. You may even ask yourself, who am I without this story? The identity that formed around your wounds doesn't know where to go now. The part of you that was always waiting for validation, always proving your worth, always healing something, starts to fade. And what's left in its place is you, the real you. Not the version shaped by karmic patterns or soul contracts, but the version that has been waiting to emerge once the dust finally settled. This is the space where embodiment begins. In this new frequency, life becomes lighter. Not because it's free of challenge, but because your relationship to challenge has changed. You don't carry the same fear in your body. You don't walk through life expecting it to hurt. You trust your ability to respond. You trust your wisdom, you trust your timing, and, in that trust, you find freedom. Not the kind that demands escape, but the kind that lets you exhale in the middle of your life. You don't need to run. You don't need to prove anything. You simply allow. You might notice that your external world starts to catch up to your internal one. New opportunities arrive that don't require you to shrink or hustle. Relationships feel mutual, balanced, rooted in truth instead of projection. You're no longer attracting mirrors of your wounds, you're attracting reflections of your wholeness. The people around you feel safe, not because they never trigger you, but because you're not looking for them to complete you. You show up full, and that changes everything. Purpose begins to feel different too. It's no longer something you chase with urgency. It's something that flows through you without pressure. You're not here to save anyone. You're not here to carry anyone. You're here to express, to create, to live in resonance with your truth. And in doing that, you become a lighthouse. Not by trying to be one, but simply by being aligned. You start to realize that your presence is the purpose, that your healing was never the end goal. It was the clearing of space for your true energy to move freely. This new chapter doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't require you to make declarations. It simply unfolds, one step at a time, one quiet decision after another. You begin to live intuitively. You choose peace over performance. You move toward joy without guilt, and you stop asking for permission to do what feels right, because you trust your own authority now. You're no longer waiting for signs. You've become the signal. There's a softness in this space that may surprise you. A gentleness toward yourself that you couldn't access when you were still deep in your karmic work. Now, compassion isn't just something you extend to others. It's something you offer to yourself, naturally, effortlessly. You rest more, you breathe deeper. You honor your body. You don't rush the process, and in doing so, you create space for grace to enter. But don't be surprised if a part of you still looks over your shoulder sometimes, wondering if the old cycle is going to come back. That's normal. It's the muscle memory of your old identity. You might question whether this piece is real, whether you've really broken free. The answer is yes, but integration takes time. It takes patience. It takes trust. You're not going backward. You're stabilizing in the new. And that new reality will ask different things of you. Not constant effort, but conscious creation. You're no longer looping. You're innovating. You're no longer playing out inherited scripts. You're writing your own story now. You're no longer defined by what happened to you. You're defined by what moves through you. Inspiration, vision, clarity. Not because you're trying to manifest from lack, but because you're finally aligned with your own creative source. You may feel less driven, but more fulfilled. Less attached, but more connected. You'll find joy in the simple things again. The sound of birds outside your window. The way sunlight dances on your skin. The quiet moment of sipping tea with presence. Life stops being a problem to solve and becomes a mystery to savor. You don't need it to be perfect. You just need it to be real. And in that reality, you'll begin to recognize your own light. Not as something earned through pain, but as something that's always been there, waiting to be remembered. You are not the cycle. You are not the wound. You are the awareness that moved through it all and came out softer, wiser, and more awake. So, if you find yourself at this edge, staring into the unknown, wondering what comes next, smile, because you've made it through the hardest part. You've untangled the loops. You've honored the contracts. You've broken the patterns. And now, you're standing in a space most souls never reach in a single lifetime. You're free, not because life will never challenge you again, but because you're no longer identified with the suffering. You're no longer caught in the repetition. You're awake, and that changes everything. Now you get to live, not for karma, not for healing, not for proving, but for the joy of creation, for the expansion of consciousness, for the beauty of being fully, unapologetically, divinely yourself.